would like to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Call this meeting to order. We'll call roll.
Certainly, Mayor. Mayor Choice-Smith.
Present.
Alder Billiard. Present. Alder Hill.
Present.
Alder Keene. Alder Lancaster.
Present.
Alder Matheson. Present. Alder Wilson. We have a quorum, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Wes, anything for the agenda, any alterations or amendments?
So the transportation grant ordinance was originally Bill 25-33 and ordinance number 250527D Delta is now Bill 25-38, ordinance number 250609D Delta, and then item number 17 is a first read, and item number 18 is a second read. I believe that is
Okay.
all that I have.
All right. If there are no questions, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson. Yes. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions, comments over the consent agenda? If everybody's had a chance to review it, can we get a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson. Yes. Thank you.
Current outstanding invoices, drafts, and check paid invoices, if any.
None to consider.
None to consider. Great, thank you. Next section is citizen input. If there's anybody that would like to come forward and talk about anything, just give us your name and your address and come forward. Seeing no one, I'll close that section.
One day I'm going to do it.
What day you're gonna? You're more than welcome to. All right, next section is presentation by Ronnie Rogers, Southwest Missouri Water.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all tonight. This is, I think, either my third or fourth time, so I apologize. I know a couple of you people have heard this before, so bear with me. I haven't changed it a whole lot, but a little bit, because we've got some better news on it. And I always start out with this quote from a really brilliant lady. Helen Keller said, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight and no vision." And that's what this is about, is not only foresight, but having a vision of what things look like with water versus without having a reliable water source. So what I want to do is talk about securing water for our future. We've been doing that for over 20 years because water is our future. If there's no water, there is no future. And we have just, as of January, secured a reallocation of storage in Stockton Lake for Southwest Missouri. We've got that approved at the Pentagon, and it's for drinking water, it's for industry. It has a cost associated with it, but it has benefits well beyond the cost, and we were able to get some really good legislation passed to get this at about half price. Plus, I've got some funding. So I'll give you kind of the background of the state of the water industry and who we are and what we're about, and then kind of why we've been doing this. Take a look back on where we've been, where we're at now, and then talk about this cost opportunity we have, and then give you some conclusions and takeaways. As background, you all probably understand the water cycle. It rains, it hits our reservoirs and our aquifers, it evaporates, it comes back around again as rain. It's a closed cycle, which is just a fancy way of saying we got all the water we've ever had, and we got all the water we're ever going to have. But we're using it for more and more things at a faster pace. We put it on our lawns, put it on our driveways, hydropower, mining. AI now uses huge amounts of water for the cooling, for the data banks. And a microchip factory can use as much water as a town of 50,000 people. And Benjamin Franklin said we know the worth of water when the well runs dry, and most of us have probably never experienced that. we're more attuned to this hydroillogical cycle where we're kind of apathetic towards it, tells us we can't water our lawns, and then it rains again, and we go back into apathy. And what we can't do is get stuck in that drought where there's no rain and in that panic mode. Water demand nationwide is going to increase 55% by 2050. That's a 400% increase in industrial and manufacturing water demand. And we've got a national infrastructure with our highways, with our power system, with our oil pipelines, but waters remain mostly local because the sources are local and the quality parameters are local. That's going to change. We're headed towards a national water system. Most of our water systems are small, just like our members and like you all, and it's going to be difficult to deal with the challenges of water in the future. And a way to handle that is the regional approach where people band together and not everybody's doing everything. You get some efficiencies. And we've got to be ready for people moving from where water isn't to where it is. That's been happening for about 15 years now, and we got to be ready for that. Also, the cost of water kind of works against us. A gallon, comparing it to the other things we use, like ketchup, it's $12, $15 a gallon. Gas, of course, is anywhere from $2 to $4 a gallon. Internet for days, a couple of dollars. A gallon of dirt's 17 cents. You can get 20 gallons of water from your faucet for less than 15 cents. So it's 20 times less expensive than dirt. And people just don't put a lot of value on it. But that's changing. Right now, it's becoming lucrative to steal water. In Mexico right now, their regulators spend more time on policing against water theft than they do water quality. They've been pelted with stones and they go out in convoys of cars of 5 and 6. State park reservoirs are being decimated by water theft, and farmers are going bankrupt from water theft. The illegal cannabis industry steals hundreds of gallons of water every year. They've been issued hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fines, but they make enough in a few weeks to pay a lifetime worth of fines. So all that to say that water now has a street value. But it's not just an illicit street value, it has a Wall Street value. And there are many firms right now on Wall Street. I'll give you lots of examples, but one is a firm called Water Asset Management. Them and others are buying land in Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and Texas. Not for agriculture and not for development, but for the water rights. And they say that water is a $1 trillion market opportunity. It's going to be the resource that defines this century, just like oil defined the last century. And you can Google any news outlet you want on groundwater, and you'll find the same thing. The groundwater levels are sinking. America's aquifers are shrinking. We're running out of groundwater, and we're using it up like there's no tomorrow. And that's kind of how this whole thing started, with groundwater. In Arizona, they've continued to drill wells. Over the past 30 or 40 years, their levels have dropped 200 feet. They're now hauling buckets of water in to wash their dishes and flush their stools. And their DNR deputy director says if you want to develop in Pinal County, which is the Phoenix area, that you got to bring your own non-groundwater supplies, that we can't put our heads in the sand on that. And you're probably saying, well, that's in the middle of the desert, it's way out west, it's a long ways from here. Right next door in Kansas, the Oglala Aquifer used to be seen as an infinite source of water. This is a prominent farmer says, I don't see how we can be so lacking in what we need to do. We can clearly see a train wreck happening in slow motion. And then finally, to bring it home, the Department of Energy just last year did the most extensive groundwater withdrawal study to date. They looked at 235 basins worldwide, 900 scenarios, and 21 basins that already peaked, meaning that they're having their water taken out faster than it can be replenished. And they highlighted 2 in the United States. The first one wasn't surprising, it was California. The second one was Missouri, right here. You might wonder why we plan out to 2060. Water project is a huge undertaking. It takes a long time. You've got to be ready. You can have a really smooth plan, but especially in today's environment, the twists and turns and the chaos, you've got to be able to respond to those changes that you can't predict. And one of my favorite sayings is if you want it bad, you get it bad, which means if you get in a hurry, it's going to cost more, it's going to take longer, and you're going to have less quality. And we've all probably been in this situation where we're not ready to be done. And this is more than just for our grade, it's for our public health and safety. And with drought, it exacerbates it. Drought's like this lady on the phone with her neighbor saying, can you go to your window and tell me what's in my front yard? At that point, it's too late. Drought sneaks up on you and you're in the middle of one before you even know it. And trying to mitigate a drought on the fly is kind of like buying an insurance policy after you're already dead. It just doesn't work. So are we in step with the water industry? Well, American Water Works Association is the preeminent worldwide organization They have a Water Initiative 2050, and one of the main points in that is that you've got to take a long-term view of the future and drive it, not wait for it to come to you. And that's what our organization is trying to do, and also that it depends on partnerships. And as I mentioned earlier, that's the way the water industry is going, is collective, cooperative, together regionalism. So, who is Southwest Missouri Water? That's an umbrella term for the Tri-State Coalition. That's how we started. It's not Tri-State anymore. Kansas and Oklahoma dropped out a long time ago because it's very hard to get water across state lines. But they still remain as kind of our communications and advocacy side of things. And then we got the Utility Commission that will actually implement the project. We got boards of directors of both, pretty much the same people, except for private entities can only be members of the coalition. They can't be members of this Public Utility Commission. But they can be a participant in the project, so it allows publics and privates to work together. These are our members. The ones with the asterisks are members of both of those organizations, and we represent 850,000 people, soon to be 1 million growing. Again, our objective is a water source for drinking, for industry, for firefighting. And the whys, I've already touched on it being a finite resource. We've got growth in our area. Water is a huge economic driver, and obviously it sustains life. And if you walk away with nothing else, the time is now. We've been working on this 20 years. We've got an opportunity here to get this water source nailed down. And back to the groundwater, being replenished, withdrawing faster than it's replenished. I liken it to our bank accounts. You know, you get paid every week or two, but you make withdrawals and pay bills every day. And it rains once in a while, but we're using water 24/7, 365 days a year. And any landowner in Missouri can drill a well. You get these wells next to each other, you get these overlapping cones of depression, and then drought even exacerbate that. And that's when you start pulling the water out faster than it can replenish itself. So groundwater is not a reliable long-term source. It may be good for the next 5 or 10 years, but not long-term. And that's how this, we based on a groundwater study. That's when we formed the coalition in 2003. We've also got growth. If you look where the growth is, it's in those blue counties. That's pretty much the southwest portion of Missouri. We got 4 of the fastest growing cities in Missouri, and we're one of the fastest growing regions in the nation. I mentioned it being an economic driver. If you were to shut down water in the United States for one day, it would cost our business, our economies, $43.5 billion. Water is money. And it's also takes water for everything. Pizzas, t-shirts, cell phones, cars, it all takes water in its manufacturing process. So water is also jobs. And you can see this in many of our large cities, and I'm not talking about third world cities, I'm talking about developed progressive cities that are facing day zero with respect to their water. And you might think, is it ever gonna happen here? Well, it can, and if you look at our precipitation data over the last 100 years, it's strictly just rainfall. Orange is dry, green is wet, and it goes back and forth. Look at that last 25, 30 years. We've been through a really wet period, and we are due for another drought and due for a long one. So a lot of things there could be a problem, but they're not, because we have a solution now. And here's what we've been doing to try to get to that solution. And this isn't intended to read, just to show the magnitude of the project. We started in '03 with a whole bunch of studies on how much water do we have and how much do we need. And then that brought us to making a request to the Corps. That was a 20-year process to get a reallocation of storage from the Corps. And now we're at the point that it's time to get those contracts in place and implement that project. So the takeaway here is it's not a 5 or 10-year project. This is a decades-long effort. And if you wait until you need it, you won't have time to get it. I won't get too far in the weeds, but just to break it down a little bit, you might wonder, how can it possibly take 20 years? We formed the coalition in '03, did the studies on water sources and availability. That led us to the reallocation request. We made that request to the Corps in 2007. Then we did some more phase studies with the Corps, formed the Utility Commission, and in 2014 is when the Corps got fully funded to do official studies. So 7 years from our request, they were able to start studies to see what answer they could give us. Then we updated our request in 2016, and they did a cost study on the whole project in 2017 to 2020. So these are the counties that were covered. I've got a stack of studies this tall, and won't bore you with all the details, but basically how much water do we have and how much do we need, and how are we going to fill that gap. The gap was 53 million gallons per day. We looked at a lot of scenarios: wet years, dry years, drought years, high demand, low demand, developed a series of bar graphs like this where the bars represent what we need and the purple line's what we have. And in most of the drought scenarios especially, what we needed is more than what we have. So the Corps completed their report in 2020 and posted it through 2021 for review and public comment. So remember, we made a request in 07. Took 7 years to get the study started. Took 7 more years to get them done. And it took 3 more years of back and forth with Corps staff and questions and answers to get to their headquarters. In the fall of last year, it went to the Pentagon, where it has to be approved by the Assistant Secretary of the Army. And as of January, it was approved by the Assistant Secretary of the Army for us to get a reallocation. So now we're trying to get those contracts in place and execute them, and then we begin to pay for the storage. And that's all the first step. I mean, you don't build anything unless you got water to put into it. So that's just to get the water source. Okay, I mentioned the cost. When we started this thing, the cost of the allocation we were asking for was probably 15 to 20 million. At the time we did our study, it inflated 33 million, which is about 1.6 million annually. And there's some operation and maintenance. It's now pushing 50 million. But last year, a couple of years, we were able to get some legislation that not only allowed us the allocation, but allows us to get it at 2010 prices. It is never going to be any cheaper. It's even cheaper than any time in the last 15 years, and it's an extraordinary opportunity for us to get this at a good price. It's going to be almost half price. Not to mention I've got possibility of funding to help us pay for some of that half price. So what we're sitting at now is getting a storage contract with the Corps between our organization and the Corps, which you are a member of, at today's price of 27 million. If not for the legislation, it'd be around 50. Then there's some O&M, and if there's any repairs, we would share in that. But that's happened once since the dams have been built, and then the term is permanent. It's your water if you decide to take it. Then there would be a pass-through contract between the Utility Commission and each of our entities, which you are one. And you would pay based on the proportion of water. And I'll show you here in a minute, your proportion is about 1% to meet your gap need. And then there's a 25% fee to cover that O&M and those other administrative costs and the repairs if they're already. And then if anybody defaults, which is not likely with water, there would be a step-up provision just like there is with power. So based on the needs, the gap needs, here's the different needs of our members. You can see Willard is listed there at 1.3%, which is about 500,000 gallons per day is the yield. If you put dollars to it, it's about $26,000 a year. Once it's paid off, you'd still have to pay $5,000 for the O&M costs of the lake, the operation of the project. I mentioned I made a request for funding. I made a request to DNR, and they've been really good partners. They paid for most of our studies, about $5 million of them. They have said that they are going to support and help pay for this reallocation, and it could lessen it by as much as another half again. I'm not sure why it's stopped working here. There it goes. So not only are we getting it half price, we may get half of it paid for. And they're working on a proposal for right now, and I'm getting ready to schedule to go meet with them. So the legislation we had offered a choice of paying at that 2010 price that I mentioned, or delaying it for 10 years. You're going to pay 166% higher price. And there's the break even for that and the 25% fee. But we aren't pursuing that second one because it's just a better deal, and DNR won't support the deferred payments. So it's just a better deal all the way around to get it help paid for, plus at that better price. So to put it into context, the western states for a long time have been paying about $2,000, $2,500 an acre foot. I read articles just recently where they're now paying $6,000, $11,000 an acre foot. If you apply just that $2,500 to the allocation we're asking for, our cost would be $235 million. If you use those next two numbers, you're talking $500 million to $1 billion. Our cost is $27 million before we get any funding. So the time is now to get this in place. And it's probably a one-time shot. It's taken us 20 years. I can guarantee it's never going to be the price again, if it's even available. And the term is from now on. Another way to look at it is 27 million, again, before the funding, that's 2 million annually. If you look at the population in southwest Missouri, that's about 400,000 households. That's $5 a year a household, or about half a penny per day per household. And I can't believe that we can't afford a half a penny per day for water. We're paying $9 for a package of Oreos. It's about our future, about priority. And it's a great opportunity for cost forgone if we pass it. And our stakeholders can handle this. And this is an example why. This is a product called Liquid Death. It's literally water in a can. And it's because it's in this cool looking can, it's a $1.4 billion a year industry. And that's not the half of it. Our society, we pay about $300 billion a year for bottled water, packaged water. That's 20 times what we spend on our water systems combined. And this is we've got a much better product, it meets much higher quality standards. So the point is that our stakeholders can handle this cost and they want to. A recent national poll by the Value of Water campaign that the top priority of water was ensuring a reliable water supply. It's followed by reducing inflation and strengthening the economy, which was shocking to me. Affordability was a concern, and that had doubled in the last 6 years. But even at that, 60% of the respondents were willing to pay $50 more a year in their water bills to be ensured everyone had basic water. And we'll continue to seek financial assistance as we go forward. When we started this, the economic impact was $500 million and 9,000 jobs. It's now up to about $1 billion and 9,000 jobs still. Also need to look at the cost of not doing it. The United States has spent about $250 billion on drought in the last 50 years. But the best way to look at it is what's the return on the cost. Water now has a return, a monetary return on the investment. So the actions that we're looking at from all of our member entities, and I wanted to, for a second, I mentioned Utility Commission. Sometimes communities think that that's another organization that's going to, it's a big brother, they're going to take them over. You're a member. You are the Utility Commission. You and Carthage and Monette and Willard and Joplin and Springfield, you are the Utility Commission. So we're asking each of our members of the Utility Commission to consider a pass-through contract if they want the portion of water that's theirs.
Misbehaving again.
Yep, there it goes. Yours is 1,195 acre feet, and I know it probably doesn't mean anything to you. An acre foot of water is an acre of water a foot deep. That'll yield to 500,000 gallons a day. And it's the estimated cost $26,000 a year with $5,000 after the year 30 for the operation and maintenance. So why buy this water? It'll cost more not to do it than it will to do it. It'll yield returns well beyond its cost. It's nearly $1 billion into our economy, and your future depends on it. Today's water problems were solved 30 years ago. Somebody did it for us. It's time to pass this forward. And you can do a lot of things, live without a lot of things, but water's not one of them. And it's something that I sell this pretty hard. I want to tell you, I don't get paid any more, any less, whether anybody signs up or they don't. Our organization doesn't get anything for it. It's an opportunity for drinking water for the future. It's for our kids and for our grandkids. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So from an infrastructure standpoint, what does that look like?
I've got another 6 or 8 minutes if you want me to go through that, or just, yes, there is an infrastructure. By committing to the water, it does not commit you to the infrastructure. That'll be a separate deal. We've done studies on that. We're starting to do more high-level studies, but we don't want to spend a lot of money on that until we add water, because if you don't have water, you don't need to build anything. But yes, that's a big, infrastructure is a big part of it. It's about 150 miles of pipe, pumps, and water tanks. And it was, when we studied, it was about $1 billion. But if you break it down, just like I did with the water, it's about 30 cents a day per household for the population. And it'll be done over probably 30 years, cost will be flattened out.
You said where's all this water storing at, coming from?
Stockton Lake.
So it's just what naturally stores into Stockton, or are you having to do the dam higher to?
No,
It's just.
that's what the reallocation was. That they took some of their storage that they use for other purposes and reallocated it. They're not going to use it for those other purposes. Now it's going to come to us for drinking, us, Southwest Missouri. And so the cost of the water is what pays those other uses for their loss of the storage that they took from them. And a lot of it's hydropower.
So if we were to enter into an agreement for the water, then obviously the next step when it comes to all the nuts and bolts and pipes to bring it here, would we be obligated
No,
to put that infrastructure in?
no.
Okay.
You can opt for the water. It does not obligate you to the infrastructure. That will be a separate contract. So the next question is, well, why would you commit to the water if you might not want to do the infrastructure? Well, it'd be like buying a piece of land. You might not build on it, but someday, in the next year or the next 10 years, it'd be worth more than what you paid for it, and somebody's going to want it. At this point, at the price we're getting it, if an entity doesn't want the water, somebody else will take it at that price. But no, it does not commit you to the infrastructure. That'll be a different agreement, and that's going to be out. It takes a long time. So we've got 5-10 years of planning and design before we can get to considering infrastructure. You got to look at the wetlands, environment, and the right-of-way, and all that kind of stuff. But you got to have the water source in place before you start that. So you got to be way out in front. We're doing things for the next generation and generation after that.
I have a question that I'm trying to formulate. If you have Stockton Lake and you're using water there currently for the hydro and all that, but if you start shipping it out and the levels deplete, how do we regenerate without?
It's a reallocation. It'd be like the Corps. It's their lake, and so those different other entities or other uses, they had a certain amount of storage that they could use.
Right.
That's now gone down. They can't use as much of that storage. It's coming over to us. So it'd be like if you got 2 kids and you give one of them $1 a week or $10 a week for an allowance, and then all of a sudden you start giving the other one a penny, and the first one $9.99. Still $10 out of your pocket. You just reallocate it.
So this is already being used and shipped out of Stockton, is what you're saying. It's just being reallocated to be used for other things.
Yeah, it's already, what they've got, it's already being used. It's just that some of the people who have been using it are going to use less so that we can have it for drinking water. Okay. It's a net zero.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yes, that's what I wanted to know. That much already gets depleted annually.
Yes. Yeah, and part of the studies was that also it works during the worst drought record. And it yields what its anticipated yield is what it yields from the worst drought record. Okay. So that's the worst case.
Roddy, could you explain to the board the cost and payback of option A and option B?
Yeah. Let me back up here. I'm not seeing my cursor. Is there a way to go back?
What do you need to go to?
I was going to go to that slide that showed the different options. When you say option A and option B, you mean for the water, taking it now versus taking it later?
Yeah, you kind of broken it down. You had a spreadsheet that kind of really showed this is Willet's cost.
Yeah.
Like for the payback period and then post payback period. I think that would be helpful for the board to understand.
Yeah, I didn't bring that. The cost, option 1 is $300 an acre foot. I need to go back the other way.
The other way?
Yeah, backwards.
How far from that?
Keep going.
Backwards?
Yeah,
Yeah, come over here.
So this is option 1. The cost is $26,000. For option B, option A, option B would be 166% times that. So it's probably $60,000 a year, and everything would go up. And break-even point, go to the next slide if that.
And that's with the 10-year push forward on
10-year, 100, yeah, you pay more plus,
166.
yeah. It was back before that, I guess. Yeah, it's 166% more. The break even between those two, if the interest rate's 5%, it costs the same. But the thing that's not included in that is that DNR won't support the deferred payments. If an entity chose to wait, they're not going to get DNR support. They're going to pay that full 27 million, or the portion of the 27 million. But 5% was the break even between the two options. But so far, none of our, we as an organization have pursued that second option, and none of the entities have, because the first one is a much better deal. Primarily because of the DNR support that we're expecting to get.
We have the documents on an agenda item, I think it's number 20. That kind of has the agreements and stuff, and then at that point I can speak about the engineer's recommendations, but I mean, I'm sure
I can
Cochran
send
took
it
a
to
look,
you
and they,
too.
yeah, if you don't mind. Cochran had looked over it, had a chance to talk with Roddy, and they were generally pretty supportive of us considering this. It doesn't, as Roddy mentioned, acknowledge or address the infrastructure needs, but Cochran's suggestion was it could be as simple as buying it wholesale from Springfield, and Springfield piping it up to us, which has the added benefit of another pipeline to tie us in if there's a problem with our wells. But there will be a shortfall in about 2040 is when they predicted it with our current growth patterns, and this does take up a good chunk of that shortfall. Groundwater, you just can't rely on forever because it drains, and whoever's got the biggest straw wins. So our straw isn't as big as someone else's in our same groundwater area, and they're going to pull it out when we start running out. And that was kind of one of those images that Roddy had up there with a heavy pump pulling from the Kona Depression, and then the well on the side just can't reach. But it is a solution for a problem for future Willard, and we're kind of providing access to the solution.
I might mention too that Springfield did this in the mid-90s, and they've got a pipeline from Stockton to Springfield now with a right-of-way that has enough room for another pipeline. So those of us on this side are even at a better advantage because there's already right-of-way down through there to get it to Springfield, and it's not that much
So they
further.
come up from Stockton to Phillips, right?
Correct, yes. And then in their distribution system. But you all, or Willard, or Ozark, Nick said they could connect at some point on the outer limits of Springfield system and be pretty close, pretty small. And I will say, this is this would be, city utilities is a member. It's not the actual city of Springfield. It's city utilities, which is a separate entity. And before, there was a question on treatment. There are very small portable treatment systems. You don't have to build a huge treatment plant that will handle 100,000 gallons a day and work very well. I put them in overseas. They work great, and they're not as expensive as a big plant. Or, as Wesley said, you could run it through Springfield's plant too. I mean,
And then drop
don't
back,
that green.
just cycle it.
It's just an option. But I can go into a little bit more context before you make a decision. And from timing wise, just so I'm not misrepresented, but I think if we're going to consider it, would be kind of a first read, second read this month, because I think you need to know by the end of next month, right?
Well, our target was to get our, whatever entities we're going to commit by our next July board meeting. I will say, I've worked with the Corps now for 20 years, and I'm not going to try and predict when they would be ready to sign this contract. It's taken us 20 years to get to this point. So it could be in the next few months, it could be the end of the year, it could be next year. But our target, but when it does come, we've got to be able to sign the contract. And so I have to know before I sign a $27 million contract or 15, whatever it is, that I've got the entities signed up to, that are going to take that water. So we got to be able to do it. And we've got, everybody is in the same process you are right now. About 3 or 4 of them are done, so.
If the board has a few questions for me at the end, we've got time to bring those to you. And
Yeah, yes, if the Corps would happen in the next month or two, it wouldn't be a lot of time for questions, but I'm not expecting that.
okay.
Is there an immediate cost if we agree to this that we're going to have to pass on to the citizens?
Yes, but by immediate, by the time we get the contracts in place and negotiated, that could be another year or two. Probably not 2, but another year.
Just in having to raise the water and sewer rates, going through all that, and then having to try to implement another raise
Yes, I
for
understand.
something that they don't see that they're needing it now for a few years.
That's a great question. I've had that from others. Let me say that I've sat in the seat, I've worked for city utilities for almost 37 years, and I've sat in that seat where you raise rates. It's a hot seat. But I can tell you with water, it's literally pennies like I've talked about, and in 6 months, they forget about it. I'm not saying you shouldn't care, but I've also sat in the hot seat where we had pumps down at Stockton in a drought, and we were just talking about the possibility of not getting water. And I drove to work, listened to the radio about how somebody ought to be fired because we thought we might not get water. That's a whole different hot seat that y'all don't want to sit on. I'm just telling you from my own experience. It's hard to raise rates, but there are harder things than that. And we never couldn't get water. We always got it there, and for the same cost. But it was not fun. It was not a fun time. If we had not been able to get water, I probably would have got fired, even though it really wasn't my fault. But not a lot of fun.
Didn't we already pay the fee?
We paid a membership, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
I
y'all
can give a
members.
bit more context on that, I can talk about it now, but yeah, just as some background, when I was hired under the city, I was asked to restore our connection with Southwest Missouri. It had maybe not been discussed and whether the board was comfortable with, so we've rejoined, and they've been very gracious about letting us back in and kind of answering my questions and helping me figure things out, and that's been appreciated. So it's just kind of at that point of, do we start, do we go, ultimately.
So consideration of something less than $26,000 a year, maybe in the next year or so, that to have the right to that water, and it's yours, it's Willard's.
Unlikely on the rate wise. Overall, the bills saw a jump, of course, but our water utility rate is about a 44 on the affordability index, so 44 cents on every dollar. Someone else pays in another community is what our citizens pay. The sewer is the painful component of the utility. So adding this, it might jump to 0.45 instead of 0.44. I doubt it at that amount, but it's cost we want to be careful on the sewer side. I could give you a specific number of what this would do to a water bill, but I likely wouldn't do much. Yeah.
Anybody else? All right, well, thank you, sir. We
Thank you
appreciate
for your
it.
time, appreciate it.
Thanks, Roddy.
All right, next item we have is a public hearing to replat Hoffman Hills Phase 1, lots 1 through 40.
So, we have Sean McKiernan here from Olson Engineering to kind of go over the project. This went through Planning Commission last week. And I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'll let him,
Your file is killing the computer currently.
it's killing the computer.
There we go. We're getting there.
Okay, all right. So, do you want me to give some highlights, Sean, or do you want to take it from here?
I can take it from here.
All right. I can do it either way.
Pretty good. Hey, how you doing? Mike introduced me. My name is Sean McKiernan. I here representing Stinger Homes. We're their engineer out in Springfield. So, long and the short of it is, this original portion of Phase 1 in Hoffman Hills was platted a couple years ago. All the infrastructure, all those improvements were completed. Those lots just did not sell. Our builder out here that's buying a lot of these lots, Trendsetter Homes, they're building all this single family in the rest of the subdivision. So developer came back and asked us basically, hey, can we replat these lots to just match the rest of the planned development, which is all just single family. So basically, I had to go through and readjust a couple of lot lines, make those patio home lots into just normal single family lots.
Where's that as patio?
Right, yes ma'am. So that's basically the gist of it. They all these lots here, I work with Mike, These lots match the area requirements for R1 for the rest of the subdivision. So basically it's just taking those patio homes and turning the rest of that portion into single family, so.
So you're saying the developers weren't interested in buying patio lot homes?
No, the other way around, single family. These originally were platted as patio homes.
Yeah, but they didn't sell.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
So, there's gonna be some infrastructure, like adjusting the water meter pits, doing one, sewer lateral, we have to take it down to another lot, just cause when we adjust those lot lines, sometimes you get, 2 meter pits on one lot, for example. So, we've also discussed kinda how we wanna adjust those utilities. I've got some construction exhibits as well to help out, the developer to make those changes too, so.
And we also didn't want to incur the developer any costs by him upgrading the infrastructure without an approval from Board of Aldermen. So they're here to present these lots. They went from 72 to about 39 lots. But we didn't want to incur, additional costs for him unless this was viable for the board.
B and Z was good to go with everything?
Yeah, planning and zoning, we went over it, knowing that Public Works and Planning has already been through it, working with the engineer on, we've ironed out a lot of the potential issues. Like Sean was saying, lot sizes meet the requirements for the existing PDD that's there, so you're not gonna have lots that are too terribly different than, what's already out there, so, yeah, they didn't have too many concerns.
So, as the replat, you just,
This essentially is just like basically, the way I envision this is just gonna be a final plat. The document that I have up there, is what I would want to record at Green County
it's
essentially.
not changing how many houses per acre per square foot.
No, it actually,
The
it
style.
reduces the density.
Yeah.
So,
Those patios can be stacked closer.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we need anything on this?
Oh,
or-
Wes, do you want something on this, or did you just want to have the discussion or final?
I think this is a final approval, right, Lane?
Yeah, this would be an approval by the Board of Aldermen for a preliminary plat. This would allow them to move forward with the infrastructure improvements. The developer's doing that on his dime.
Okay.
He will be, taking away some sewer stubs so we don't have INI issues and moving some meter pits like they were saying, to get these lots, like new.
Cause
So-
you'll need fewer sewer pits and
correct.
meter stubs, right?
Correct, yeah. So being patio homes, they had two stubs per lot.
Yeah, you'll go-
Regular lots will only have one, and we don't allow multiple laterals on the same lot, so they'll be handling all that. Upon approval.
We're gonna have to wait for next meeting regarding the vote
Because it's listed on here as public hearing versus any kind of.
versus the.
And we're gonna change how we do those, we're gonna make them more economic, but, this one was already in the phase, but, because it's a public hearing, the mayor can open officially the public hearing, I believe it was advertised appropriately and, has been recommended to the board, so the board can see if anyone has any comments regarding the hearing, and then you can close the public hearing, and, then you just ask to have the ordinance on the agenda for the approval. And you can do it as a double read at the next one, so it's not a delay.
So I will open the public hearing regarding the replat of Hoffman Hills.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah,
Use
that's
that thing.
official.
Use it.
That's the one time, and
That's like a
then you
highlight
count
of
it
being
and
the
check
mayor.
into that.
You gotta take advantage of this.
I know, I could be your
Yeah, we're
official,
throwing it when you admit
I
that.
could be your official gavel
You're
counter.
sitting far enough away from Ollie.
Does any member of the public want to come forth and speak on the matter regarding the replatting of Hoffman Hills? Seeing none, I will close the hearing.
Pound the gavel. That was aggressive.
then our next meeting, we'll add the ordinance to the agenda, and then we'll take a vote on it. All right, thank you very much.
And the engineer's asking for a double read at the next meeting so
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you can effectuate it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, project manager report for the sanitary sewer status. Steve?
Okay, with regards to the 94 lift station force main, in my report, I said our third partial payment request was submitted to Region 7 of the EPA. And I said we're still waiting a response, well, as of 1 o'clock this afternoon, we got it. Funds are available, and I think Carolyn should tap them tomorrow. So apparently our frozen conditions have been thawed somewhat. Temporary construction easements and exhibits have been created by Alder Martin surveyors, and I'm in the process of contacting the affected landowners. This is construction easement temporary along the route where we need access, and an area for laydown of materials and parking and equipment. And then we're ready to advertise for bids for the lift station improvements and force main. I've got this as a separate agenda item. I'd like us to follow this one. And with the Meadows connection to the city of Springfield right now, no update at this time.
Thank you.
Just approving the advertise.
So Wes or Steve, on item number 14, looking for approval for advertising for bids on 94 lift station. Are you wanting to vote on that, or just?
I'll request a motion, a second, and affirmative vote to authorize Alder Martin to advertise for bids.
What he said.
Make a motion that we,
Do what Steve
approve
said.
what Steve said.
I'll second.
There you go, look at you guys go.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, item number 15. Rebecca.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with CJW for services and engineering on Farm Road 103. Second read.
We talked about this one last time,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
there were no changes, right?
Nothing.
No changes.
Okay, then I make a motion, we approve the ordinance as read.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item number 16.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with CJW for services and engineering on Jackson Street from Perryman to Jefferson. Second read.
Any changes?
No, ma'am.
Make a motion that we approve the ordinance as read.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item number 17.
An ordinance of the Board of Alders of the City of Willard, Missouri, recognizing an agreement between the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission and the City of Willard, granting the City of Willard transportation project funds for a pedestrian underpass at US 160 and Route 8E. This is actually a first read.
We discussed it at the no, that was at the,
This one is giving us money.
Yeah, this is what we need in place to acquire money to pursue money.
yeah.
This is required by the state, that we get an ordinance by the alderman, as we will be using federal funds on that project, so.
It's the first read though, right?
Yep.
That's the first read.
Can we read twice?
Huh?
Can we do first and second tonight, or no?
I don't think we technically presented anything last night beyond the idea.
There's, your agenda informs them that this is in front of the board. The board always has the ability to do a second read. I don't think it would be a violation of sunshine as far as a tentative agreement, especially because you actually delineated it as a second read, which would effectuate it tonight. So you absolutely could do a vote. So you've done your first read, move to, if you do it by motion normally to have a second read, or you can just move to second read, she can second read, and then you can do, when there's no discussion, a roll call vote, and it's enacted.
May I read it again?
I would say that we need to read that again so we can go ahead and vote this and move it forward.
Right.
An ordinance of the Board of Alders of the City of Willard, Missouri, recognizing an agreement between the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission and the City of Willard, granting the City of Willard Transportation Project funds for a pedestrian underpass at US 160 and Route 80. Second read.
I make a motion that we approve the ordinance as read.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 18.
An ordinance of the Board of Alders of the City of Willard, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilling Inc. for the planning and design of a U.S. Highway 160 pedestrian underpass. And this is a second read.
Make a motion that we approve the ordinance as read.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And just for the board's information, this allows us to enter into negotiations with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly, all the engineering. We don't have a firm number on what that's gonna be. We anticipate it's gonna be between 10 and 15% of the total project, but this allows us to negotiate with them for that engineering, so.
Way to destroy our momentum, Mike.
Oh, it's already approved.
You already have them.
Whether I say anything or
Hello,
not.
so.
I read through my packet.
We have
I
the
know what
momentum,
we
Mike.
were looking at.
Put
All
a scoop
right.
up in front of us.
I just want to be very clear on that.
Item 19.
An ordinance reestablishing the organization and operation of an economic development task force for the City of Willard, authorizing the mayor to proceed with the appointment of a 9-member advisory board with the approval of the Board of Aldermen to serve as the Economic Development Task Force.
So that's a witty one. This ordinance will reestablish the task force. From what I can tell, the task force last met in 2023. The ordinance was from 2011 and dissolved the task force upon submission of their final report. I couldn't find anything to indicate they ever actually submitted a final report, or if a new ordinance was ever reestablished to revive the task force in 2023. But my thoughts are, the lack of meetings, I think we can reasonably deduce it needs to be redone, so I've represented it to you. So with your approval of that ordinance, there is no shut-off period, although obviously the board can determine in the future they don't want to shut it off. But with your approval, I can start trying to solicit members based on the criteria set, which I've kind of regurgitated from before, so if you want to change in those criteria, certainly let me know. But then we get the plan set in motion, see if we can incentivize development and see what, desirability and things like that look like.
Have you had any conversations with the Chamber of Commerce or members
I
of
have
their?
not had any conversations yet. I'm kind of reusing what worked in the past and saying if we can just make it work again, but again, if there's anything additional you would like me to do ahead of the second read, I would be glad to do that.
What kind of timeline are you looking for members to be able, or community members to be able to apply to be on the board?
I'm a very impatient man, so the sooner the better. Because the more, to me, civic
Because
engagement
you
is,
get moving with this, the
Yeah.
better off the community is,
Exactly.
truthfully.
to me, all the input, I mean, you get ideas from the strangest places sometimes. So the more people and the more conversations we're having, the more hopeful we are that an idea is going to emerge that we can pursue. If we can get it done before Carolyn gets the budget to you guys, and there's an incentive package that we can figure out how to put it together, then potentially we could execute it as early as next year.
And I'm assuming you'll stagger your appointments so that not everybody falls off in 2 years.
Yep. We'll kind of regurgitate the style from the water board, just to get that initial setup going.
Any other questions?
Are you wanting a Board of Aldermen representative on that board?
I think I wrote that in there.
It's in the ordinance.
Yeah. And actually, I think we already have a volunteer, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I think about it.
That's why she had the more questions.
Volunteer/voluntold. I can't remember.
All right, anything else, anybody? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 20.
An ordinance of the Board of Alders of the City of Willard, Greene County, Missouri, authorizing the appointment of 1 director and 1 alternate to the Southwest Missouri Joint Municipal Water Utility Commission.
So there's a whole bunch of paperwork on this one, so I'm just going to kind of turn back here to the additional context I got from Cochran, Tim Show of Cochran, kindly provided some insight. So I'll read his information here just to give you that context. The initial fees for joining more formally the Southwest Missouri or the JMUC will be for storage rights only. The rights can be purchased and sold in future from other communities, and he's been told that other communities are already expressing interest in buying rights from one another. So, and apparently City Utilities also stated that they wish it asked for more storage when it was originally proposed. So I mean, what Roddy's saying as far as interest out there and it being an appreciating asset for us is about right. Storage rights are based on what Stockton Lake can handle for the worst experienced drought, which was in the 50s and 60s. Wetter periods will allow for a slight increase in additional usage, so being that, you know, maybe we can pull more out of the thing. Basically, the Army Corps determines the inflow and the outflow, and then they make the allocation from that inflow and outflow. So if the outflow is kind of low, we might also see a reduction, but generally speaking, we should see what we see. Alternatives, he also suggested the CU route as far as CU treating the water and sending us potable water wholesale. Of course, that's pie in the sky, subject to discussions, agreements, and haggling and all that good stuff, but it is an option. O&M costs are based on the lowest cost approach and a percentage approach. So he's blended the two values together, and that $5,600 a year after is currently assumed to be correct. Alternative A, actually his number is wrong, so bear in mind real quick. So option A would be $358,500 over the 30-year life cycle at about $26,000 per year. That includes the O&M, and then after that it would be the O&M of about $5,600. Option B is about $589,135. I can write down how much I mapped that out at.
But that's the one that's not supported by the Corps, correct?
That's the one that DNR, if they decided to offer some financial help, they wouldn't help us. They will only help those communities that sign on to option A and get busy with it. Deferred option would not result in financial help. So again, it's hard to quantify how much that will be, or if anything, they may decide we're going to prioritize something else. But we do know for sure there won't be any assistance with option B. Going back over here. He's got 2025 daily usage right now is about 1.2 million gallons per day, and 2055 usage will be 2.8, based on growth patterns for the next 25 years. He said these rights will not completely satisfy the entire demand of the city. It will supplement the volume provided by the wells, and based on current availability, they did anticipate a shortfall in 2040, so it will provide a portion of that shortfall, but not all of the shortfall. To get to 2.8 million gallons per day, it would require 6 total wells running 700 gallons per minute. 700 gallons per minute is approximately the capacity of the Meadows well, so we need a couple more of those. And then he's seen the storage at Willett at 1195 acre feet, which is about 1 million gallons per day. So that's kind of the map that he's been using, and Roddy kind of confirmed it there. So right now the agreement before us is kind of committing us to a path as far as going in. It appoints Troy or whoever the mayor would be at the time to be the director on JMUC, and then I would be the alternate. And that's kind of what's under consideration at the moment. And then of course there will be agreement forthcoming as far as, do we want to do option A or do we want to do option B?
So this is preliminary
Preliminary.
to any fiscal.
Yes, at
obligation.
some point we're gonna have to choose an option, if any. Obviously, if we don't choose any, we're booted out of the club. But we'll need to choose an option at some point. That's what we're gonna kind of get Roddy to confirm, is it changes regularly, but it does look like still at some point this year, we're gonna need to make a stay or go decision.
Wes, can I speak?
Yes, sir.
Yes, of course.
I was just gonna say, if you decide not to take the water, you can still be members.
Okay, that way
Obviously,
that's,
it's not
thank
gonna,
you.
it's not gonna meet the whole gap. We're making another request for some more for that next layer. But you can still be members if you don't.
Okay, thanks, Roddy.
Yeah, it really doesn't change your position at this point. It keeps you in the game essentially.
To decide down the road if we needed.
Hopefully within the next month.
Yep.
We'll make a decision, yes or no. So we can get on the board.
And if you have particular feelings in a direction, then I can explore it in more detail with Roddy and get something formalized sooner than later. It's a first read.
Is this?
Yeah, it's a first read. It's a first read.
I think considering the sensitivity of water at the moment, let's have our second read when it's posted on the agenda.
Yeah.
So if there is any review by
That way,
the
if
constituency that
anybody
would
has
like comment,
questions, they can
it
ask.
doesn't look like it was swept under the carpet, so
And
let's
read through
not do a
quickly.
second read tonight,
Yeah.
if that's acceptable to you guys.
So is that something that has been, I know they've only met once, but presented to the water board as well? Or whatever.
Oh, yeah, we have another water board on July 17th, I think it is.
I mean, even if the alder vote for it at our next meeting, but just that it still be presented
We
to
could do
that
that.
board.
Did they already discuss?
This was not a
I
topic.
mean, I know this has been something that we've talked about
Mhm.
prior.
Yeah. this was
We've
not-
talked about it, but I didn't know if
Our first meeting was more orientation and system challenges than is the skivvy on the water system, but yeah, we can absolutely present that. Not a problem.
And from a budgetary, I don't want to get off, if I go too far off track from the agenda, just let me know. From a budgetary standpoint, just considering the timeline of recent events with water and sewer, when the first bill comes due, possibly in a year, maybe a little more, would there be anything from a budgetary standpoint that would require that that money come from
is that gonna
the
increase.
sewer and water? I mean, can we pull it from somewhere else, just so that doesn't impact rates for the moment? I mean,
I think you're gonna
just to
have
let
to
this,
Is it
confine that.
something
Settle
that
in.
the city absorbs, or is it something that immediately
I
has to be
think you're
passed
gonna
on?
have to confine it to the utility. It's not to say you can't absorb it if the rate is healthy. Keep in mind, as the rate structure is built, the water utility supports the sewer utility for a time. So ultimately, the water utility is healthy. And
But that's
probably
supporting for 6 years
But that, the
and up
point
to 10 with the
of the
depletion.
increase was to allow for infrastructure.
Correct, but also part of that rate structure was the necessary support for the sewer system, because the sewer system is gonna need some propping up. But yes, there are infrastructure projects as part of the.
this would be
water
an
capital
additional,
group.
that's why I'm saying
I know.
that if we could delay, I mean, our bill comes due, certainly we could pay it from another source other than the rates.
But
Tax
we're not
money
gonna
to the
get
citizens.
deemed if
Yeah, it
we're-
can't go the other way.
Right.
You guys can always prop up your water and sewer system.
I guess what I'm getting at is,
You have
can we
to
delay
borrow to
asking
pull it back out.
asking the people for another increase for
Yes.
a couple of years is what I'm asking.
This amount is unlikely to change that dynamic in any way.
Okay.
We're always gonna want to, and as the ordinance that we passed, annually we are supposed to review the rate for progress and make recommendations on predictable patterns. So by January, we should, if we're gonna do a rate, we should have the rate down as part of the budget cycle. Doing or not doing this does not, it's not big enough to change the overall dynamic, in my opinion, of what
Not
we'll
at the
see a
half
rate
cent.
increase. Yeah, I mean, at a half cent, you could agree to just go, you know, we need 1% because of this, we're good. I mean, it's not gonna be 1%, I mean, much less than that, but I just don't see this being a,
You said it was
Huge drag on-
0.44 right now?
yeah, we're 0.44 on affordability. Now, of course, I always coach that with, people know what they know. So if people are paying $50 on a water bill and we put it to 52, they're still not gonna like it, even though the guy in the town next door is paying 65. They're not paying that, they don't care.
Right.
So they know what they know, and affordability index is only so far, but you at least know when people, push comes to shove, and people say, my bill's too high and you guys are overcharging me, and we say, well, you know, technically, it's well within that affordability.
So for the short of both questions, the city could prop the water and not have.
Just for a short
Right,
term
for a
period.
short term.
Yeah, and obviously it can be offset, I mean, it's all pie in the sky until we choose a number and map that out, but I mean,
Right.
as we grow, that also puts more customers in the system to offset
Mhm.
potential rate increases.
And then you can see what it needs to be and then project it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, so there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, but
Sure.
once you pick a number and.
Well, like Mayor said, if it comes due now, the city could prop that while we see
But
what it needs.
it won't come due until next year either way.
Okay.
We're just committing to a path, and then assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong already, but assuming the Army signs on to the agreements and everything, we're looking at next year being when that comes due.
When the contract is negotiated, that's the big
I think that's the big- but the
investment
numbers
and
are-
commitment.
Right,
What-
correct.
What you would be considering tonight is essentially not really much of a move forward, it's creating a representative. It's when you get to the contract, because you guys joined. When you rejoin, that puts you in that financial commitment. And then when you contract, that has the contractual agreement or commitment.
I speak. And one other thing, the resolution that we drafted, I'm not sure if that's, I think in the packet, is to give the city administrator the authority to sign that contract when the Corps says, okay, we're ready to sign. That contract will be very similar to what I showed you. It might be 1198 or 1,200 acre feet to 1195, but the final numbers will be within less than 10% of that. Now, I was going to say, you guys have to operate on certainties, but part of the proposal I gave to DNR on the funding was that they make a down payment plus in the first 10 years, they pay 75% or all of the payment, and the next 10 years, they pay 50%. So if that gives it, you might be able to not have a payment for a few years if that funding comes through. I know it's an if, but we've got a pretty good shot at that. Yes, sir.
All right. So we just tonight need to approve for the
Really just for the positions, all this is asking for
This is a
the
first
appointment.
read, so it's a
appointment
first
of the
read.
board.
It's a first read, so
Yeah.
it's just discussion
Yeah.
tonight.
Okay.
Anything else on that? All right, Paul, did you want to research anything before we go? All right, item number 21.
An ordinance of the Board of Alders of the City of Willard, Missouri, accepting the bid for the deposit of city public funds and authorizing the mayor to execute related agreements.
So this one, I'll let Carolyn speak if I get out of turn, but we put the banking services up for bid recently. We had 4 respondents. We scored and graded those on a subsequent meeting, and we all had our different perspectives, but the one that came out ahead was Commerce, in part because our money's already there, so there's some degree of security in the decision, but they also were willing to offer us an additional 0.5% interest rate. The other banks, when we averaged them up, had a slightly more compelling interest rate, which Commerce has agreed to raise their rate to 3.5. And they also offer us some municipal investing services to hopefully help make our money work a little bit more in the background within statutory requirements for investments. You want to add anything on that one?
Basically, the scoring was based on what we thought was the most important to the city. On the things we did score on, we didn't score on some things that were all the banks were the same, that there was no difference in them. So it was mainly just the main things that we were really felt was important on that. Commerce Bank has came to speak, and if you have any questions, come up and speak. And then if you have any questions, we are recommending Commerce Bank for the bids, and I'll be talk to you.
Hi,
Hi, how are you guys?
Jason Snow,
Becky Gillette.
I've known Commerce since '97.
I've been in banking my whole life. I've been at Commerce for 7 years. I've actually worked with the city and Carolyn majority of that until recently another treasury officer has stepped in. So my role is really the banking side, so all the services that they're accessing online, doing accounts, payroll, those types of things. So we did come to the table with a few additional solutions that we thought would be good for the city. We've had a great audience where they've been very interested in adding some technology that's cost effective to the city, saving time, allowing those people to be deployed to do other things. So Jason handles all your rates.
And as far as the investment goes, we really appreciate the relationship with you. I think we've worked with you for about 10 years on the current banking business. And to her point, we've increased our rate to 3.5%. That's a floating rate like the others were. But if you, we've been working and talking with Wes and his team about just doing a short-term treasury ladder, and you can get over 4% on that. So that would put it higher. There's no additional fees for that. We do that with a lot of municipalities in the area, Greene County, Taney County, Platte County, cities all over. So we find that works pretty well. So we kind of, a lot of times you'll have your cash, you minimize your cash, and make sure you have enough liquidity to take care of your daily, monthly needs. And then if you have an excess, you can get that higher rate in short-term treasuries, you know, and it's with very little risk. So
without showing like 100 pages of RFP response, we really just wanted to be here knowing it was going to be read to see if you had questions, kind of put a face with the name of the folks you guys work with.
You know, I read through what they printed out for me, and
We try to follow it down as dense as we could. Another thing I wanted to point out that we pursued this cycle, we didn't really have anything in terms of fraud prevention and positive pay on our banking. So that was one that we wanted to make sure, and Congress did present a compelling package where it could kind of be a tokenized system, and we have the option to see what's going on and set limits and set pays and things like that. So it helps protect the citizens' money just a little bit better than, well, really a lot better than it is right now.
I don't have any questions.
I've been on the side of having to switch from one provider to another and doing all of the EFTs. Now I'm in a different field, but it is a giant pain. So the value in staying where you are is massive. I'll be very honest. That is huge.
Put a whole bonus point from the entire panel on that one.
It is, that is huge right there. Just to be able to work with your existing provider and have you guys be able to do the things that they're wanting and be able to meet the needs that we have and stay is huge, because it is a giant pain.
you never get those hours back in your life.
You do not.
And we very much appreciate the transparency and just everything with your finance team has been wonderful. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. You sure we can't get 4.5?
I'll call Chairman Powell on the math.
Always ask for a little more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just for the record, the parameters that were utilized for determining which depository you wanted you complied with RSMO 110.075 and all of those criteria. Just making that clear.
Thank you.
I wish you guys have.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Alright. Item number 22.
An ordinance of the Board of Alders of the City of Willard, Missouri adopting an amendment to the 2025 budget.
I'll let Carolyn go over the details on this one, because she's got the spreadsheet, but it's a marginal increase in overall budgetary authority of, I believe, about 400,000 upwards from authorized budget. Well,
The increase
yeah,
is 355,000.
no, I was close.
If you look at the first page, for the general fund, there was an increase in expense of 71,000, water and sewer 285,000, and then the parks was reduced 1,700. And if you go to the next page, the general fund, we'll go through why there was increases on it. There was a lot of areas that there were no increases. We did add some new accounts. I worked with Mike on setting up. He wanted to break down some of the things so we would know better what the expense was, what the revenue was. And that is some of the changes that it may look like there's an increase in one area, but it was decreased in another area. One of the areas was the police facility fee. That goes back from planning and zoning fees that are put in for the police station. That increases the revenue for police $2,000. And then there's a street capacity fee. It increases, we show $1,000, which total receipts increase $3,000 on that. On salaries for general, the only increases were from overtime. There was some overtime needed for the general fund, and then for courts, because we've had bigger courts, it was necessary for them to work longer hours as well on some of the work. Streets, there was overtime needed in streets. All of them together weren't a large number. It was a total of about a little over $2,000, but that also includes payroll tax, because if you have overtime increase, you also have payroll tax to match. So on services and supplies, inflation unfortunately has hit the budget as well. So there's increase there. For equipment, software, and maintenance, we added Asset Panda, which is an inventory program to track our inventory. And then because of adding the position of the assistant finance director, we needed an additional Adobe license and Microsoft license. For court, it actually went down. We lowered it a little bit because of the overtime to try to make up the difference, to balance it out, keep our budget down. For streets, we have an additional 10,000, and that goes back to additional sidewalk projects. And for street lights, is the electric went up.
Can we back up for a second, Carolyn, because when it comes to math, sometimes it takes a while for things to sink in for me. So we've had bigger courts, which intuitively would tell me there would be an increase in revenue from the courts. I understand that there'd be an increase in overtime. You said that we lowered the court revenue because of the overtime?
No, we lowered the travel and training. They didn't think they would need that extra travel and training. So our court revenue, or balance of expenses wouldn't increase, we lowered the training because they didn't think they was going to use it.
This is just identifying things that have been changed versus the overall budget.
Yes.
This is the overall budget number for the department, but these are the specific items that have been adjusted.
Okay.
Right. It's just the things that have changed.
All right.
As far as the revenue, basically, the revenue is determined by the prosecutor, kind of, and then by certain rules. I guess Holly could probably
You're
explain that.
capped on the majority of your fees due to all of the legal changes at Ferguson. They have specific requirements to prevent it from being a financial support or a financial revenue. So if you come in and you can't pay a fine, they cannot put you in jail for that. So it really, you can allocate and enter into a plea agreement for a payment amount, but that still doesn't get the money in the bank. And that can sit there. And the abilities within the court system to make them pay are extremely limited.
So there's not a cap per violation for individuals, cap,
There
an aggregate
are.
what the city can take.
There is a set amount that you can charge for the majority of fees. The ones that are exempted, so your minor traffic offenses, your nuisance offenses, those have preset amounts that can be fined.
But we don't have a cap on how much we can take in as
You
an
do.
aggregate.
You do. It
It can be a
can be
proportion of the
more than
overall revenue?
20% of your overall, I think it's
Budget.
20% of your overall
Oh,
budget.
wow.
Yeah, your municipal court can't be more than 20%.
Which we don't even come close to.
No, but it's not a revenue source. It is absolutely not that, but because of the way that St. Louis utilized the system and abused the system, it caused an effect on the entire state that only St. Louis was known to.
Max Creek.
You know, they got dinged 25, 30 years ago, but it's, so in St. Louis, the reason they did it was, first of all, they would charge you fees just because you had the charge, and you had to pay those fees whether you were guilty or not. So it was all this revenue, everything that happened was an amount of money. And so it was a dollar amount, but the majority of the state, all but the St. Louis area, the majority of the state, we're already doing all of these things. We just want to make it a problem for you to violate our ordinances so you can be a good neighbor and a good citizen. So it's never a desire of ours to cause a financial difficulty. It is always a desire and a resolution within prosecution to get them to be rule followers, at least in our ordinances.
Behavior modification. That's
There you
my
go.
understanding. All right, thank you.
But the number
Whatever you
of
want.
cases do not, I mean, it's not necessarily related to revenue. You can have more cases and still not have extra revenue. So, and the cases, and the number of people in court had risen lately, so it takes more time to go to work, so.
Thank you. You were on streets and I kicked you back to court, so you're probably on planning and economic development now.
Planning, okay. There is some areas that are lowered, and again, we've changed some accounts around, a decrease in surveying, and part of that goes back to available staff, changing basically, maybe you can explain.
You want me to go for it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
explain this.
Yes, so on this, we were just catching up for lost time on that, so we split engineering out, so we could track engineering, because we knew we were gonna have a lot of contracts coming up this year. We wanted to be able to track that more thoroughly. And then also, we have under professional, we wanted to split that out because we knew we had a master transportation plan coming up, and we wanted to be able to make sure we were meeting that requirement of 43,000 that was approved by the board, so we could track those more thoroughly. So we wanted to split these up just to make it easier to track.
That's why the 10,000 difference on professional, is that where that number was able to be?
Yeah, we shifted some around, and she adjusted some of the bills to go back into those different accounts, just following that.
The contract labor on the 10,000, that would be, because we were planning on hiring a full-time inspector, so that would go into salaries versus contract labor. So that's why there's a deduction on it. The budget had included that inspector originally, so we didn't have to increase the budget amount because it was already in the budget.
Which you'd mentioned that on a previous, that it was already there.
So, so we won't need a contract labor inspector,
So,
or not as much.
So I'm being harassed about my car. So the reason it's went up is we have two vehicles that we're currently paying for because we do have hopefully an inspector if they so apply.
We almost had one,
We almost had one, but
the one that got to.
he decided against it. So that's why there is a difference in I'm really not driving two vehicles.
How do you manage that? That's impressive.
One on each foot.
I need to master that skill.
Yes, that is for the additional person to have a vehicle. And it won't be another vehicle right now. It would be the vehicle that is currently being used by City Hall for administrative purposes. So, on that. Are there any other questions on that? Okay, we'll go down to capital outlay. Because we added the assistant finance director, we were running short of office space, so the parks director, he decided he would go to the rec building, and they had to provide an office for him over there. And because of additional staff at City Hall, we put that amount in the City Hall budget, because the amount to provide that office was $3,000, and then we took over the parks director's office. Our accounts payable person did, and then the assistant moved into where the accounts payable person was. So that's what the cost on that. There's a charge figured for a front door for the police station. They were needing a new front door. They were, maybe Wes, you could explain that.
So it hasn't been approved yet, it's been preliminarily lined up. We still have to figure out those issues, concerns I have with the agreement terms. But yeah, it's just there if it goes through. If it doesn't go through, then that line goes back the way it was.
That was the first read when we discussed that door, wasn't it?
It was the first read. We haven't brought it up this time around because we still waiting on input on the agreement terms. But yes, we'll also need a budget ongoing costs if it's approved for future years for the access controls.
Okay, going down to streets, the Jackson Street, the final invoice didn't get received until this year, so we had to include that into this year's budget. We thought we would get all the bills last year, but we didn't. There was a couple left. So, as well as the Public Works building, we thought they would have it completed, but it was not completed. So there's additional cost. It's split between streets, water, and sewer. 20% goes to streets, 40% goes to water, and 40% goes to sewer. And some of the things they thought they would get finished, they did not get finished. Same with the fiber upgrade, it ended up costing us more than we thought. Previously, they had, their telephone didn't work very well. It wasn't very clear, it didn't work half the time. Their internet was bad. We was able to get fiber into their building so they could have a telephone that actually worked. And again, we was planning on that being part of the expense last year, but it didn't get finished up, so it ended up this year, so we moved it to this year. The milling head attachment was taken out of the budget. There was a reason if you go down to the skidster. One of the skidsters died, the case, and it was gonna cost $12,000 to fix the skidster. It was quite old. After discussion, it was decided it wasn't worth fixing. We was afraid we would have more problems with it. And after investing that amount of money, the Public Works has recommended going with another skidster. The skidster that they leased last year did not have what they call high flow hydraulics, and they needed that in order to run some of the street equipment, and the case did that, but the new one does not. So we're recommending to purchase a skidster. The skidster cost probably about $100,000. It would be split between streets, water, and sewer. In other words, $20,000 in streets, $40,000 in sewer, $40,000 in water for that. Is there a question about that?
And for clarity, this, they would still need to go to bid, and that would still need to be a bid that you guys approve before it fetches. This is just allocating it in case that goes ahead. Now we know where the money can come from.
The bush hog that was right before that, kind of jumped that one. We took out, it moved it to 2026 budget. Since we had the additional, we're looking at additional expense on that. Planning and development, their plotter quit on them, and so the plotter that they was planning on getting didn't work correctly or right, and so they had to get a more expensive one. So that's the cost of the extra plotter. Then Civic Review, which is the software that we got for planning, and the cost for that to get it set up. And going on down, overall, total capital expenses would increase $72,300. Transfers would actually be decreased because of some of the projects that, and that goes back to streets, didn't go through last year. It actually increased our total bottom line a little bit. So the actual cash balance should be about $291,000 more than we originally planned. So even with the additional expenses. Are there any questions on the general? If not, we'll go to water and sewer. Water and sewer, again, in order to identify revenue and expenses, we added some accounts and changed some accounts around. The first one, the meter replacement, we took out of that because we were adding into water infrastructure upgrade and the new construction meter install. and the water capacity fees, which overall, because of some infrastructure like that we've had, received funds for different, well, for Sauk River is one of them, but different places that reimburse the city for the cost. We figure it's going to be about $120,000 more than we originally projected. On the sewer revenue, the sewer infrastructure upgrade, again, we broke down the accounts for the revenue, and we have been reimbursed by different ones for projects that are ongoing, so that will be increased. For grants, on the ARPA grant, at the end of the year, we ran into a situation where they changed the rules, which they were really good about changing the rules from the day one since ARPA started. And what they did was in November of last year, they decided that you had to have a contract in order to carry forward any funds. And we didn't have a contract for any except for about $100,000. We had been saving that funds, them grant funds, for projects. But because if we did not use them in 2024, because the deadline was 12/31/24, we would have had to pay about $600,000 back. We would have not been able to keep those funds. So therefore, we applied those funds to projects that we were already doing and currently had going. And so we didn't spend any extra money, we just applied the funds to those projects. So
Projects that we had contracts with.
projects, you didn't have to have a contract until January 1, 2025. Then you had to have a contract. So anything we had left over at the end of 2024, we had to have a contract for, which we do have contracts enough to cover about $100,000 currently. So we had to show that we had spent that money prior to December 31st, 24.
Because you had to allocate and appropriate within the 2024 year.
Right.
Instead of waiting till the very end, which was April 30th date, 2025. Because a lot of people were just holding theirs, and they clarified that it had to be appropriated or and allocated or committed through contract by December 31st, 2024.
So basically, the money didn't really change, but the way it's set up, it was set up in escrow. When we actually use the money, we take it out of escrow, put it into revenue. So we took it out of escrow, put it into revenue for these different projects. So we still are the same as far as money-wise, but we had to show that we had used the money. So we was gonna pay for it ourselves, these different projects, but instead we used this money. So the money we was gonna pay for the projects is basically going to be used on.
It's still going on the same things, we've just
It's
changed.
kind of 6 of one, half
We've
of the
changed it from a dollar that had a red strike on it to a dollar that has a green strike on it. It's still the same dollar in the same bank, but we've had to satisfy the federal government that that dollar actually was spent. We actually weren't saving it. But it nets out the same, because federal, but they told us there was some changes coming, and unfortunately we had just enough time to really start going through and saying, okay, we've got $100,000 in the bank, well, let's just say that's the $100,000 we spent on this $100,000 project we already paid for in March, and now that's our dollar instead of their dollar. It's very frustrating how they did it, but I know Carolyn and Steve had several meetings kind of going through line by line looking at stuff.
When we were looking at the Meadows gravity trunk line, we were anticipating using ARPA funds for that. So we had in place, by the end of December of '24, contracts with Alger Martin for preliminary engineering, bidding, and construction observation. So we're good on those amounts. What caught us by surprise was the necessity to have a contract for construction by January 1 of 2025, which we were not ready. We had to put it out for bid. We had no idea. We had a budget. Well, that not being a valid expense is where Carolyn took that budgeted money and went back and looked at past projects we had done that could be allocated against our revenue that we'd already paid for with cash out of water and sewer fund. So it's a move. Now, the 94 lift station is a separate deal. It's a congressional earmark, EPA administered grant, not ARPA. So, as I said, we got our third payment today. We're moving along on
That's a separate ARPA
that. Separate from ARPA.
from that ARPA. And what it amounts to is the fund balance ends up looking like we have more, which, because it's been put into revenue. But we have the same, but it's put into revenue. I know it's confusing, but any questions on that? Okay, I'll move forward then. Okay, because that revenue was put into 2024, then it's going to look like the revenue is less than 2025, but our fund balance was higher. So therefore, we still come out the same. Okay. If you go on down to services and supplies, on lab supplies, they had some supplies left over that they didn't end up not using last year, so we was able to lower the cost for supplies. Permit fees, that's for the state operating permit that we do. And then the 60,000, that's again infrastructure expense that we're allocating some of what we had in capital improvements to different accounts. And so it looks like it's increasing, but some of the expenses was actually in capital improvement expense. So, they had the generator repair and maintenance, which got moved up there. Meter replacement, which was originally capital improvements. It was increased as well. They were using more meters than we had purchased, so we had to order some more meters because we've always got to have so many on hand because they don't want to get to a spot where they're running out of meters. So on that. And then if you go down to sewer, again, infrastructure expense, we've kind of changed some of that around. It has increased because we did, on the infrastructure I was talking about, like Sauk River, we did some extra work, we got extra revenue, therefore there was extra expense, so that brought that up too. I&I is another one, we wanted to separate it out and so we could identify more easily cost. Locate supplies is another one. Equipment repairs and maintenance, that did go up. It did get higher, more repairs than we had thought we would have projected. Property easements, another one we shifted up so we can break it out and show the expense out of, because the capital improvements is one account and it's kind of, all that stuff's grouped in there and that helps identify and helps you understand more what some of these expenses are. Any questions on that? Capital outlay, again, to finish up the public works building, 20% went into streets, 40% water, 40% sewer. It's in water and sewer. The fiber upgrades, same increase. Then, as I was talking about the streets, the skidster, it's in 40% is in water and 40% is in sewer. The water meters, there's a negative amount because we moved it up to a separate account out of capital improvements account. And we took out miscellaneous equipment of 10,000 because we moved some other things up. AI the same, or I&I the same. We moved it up to the services, took it out of the capital improvements. And public works generator the same, and then the easement is negative because we moved it up to the other, so it's separated out of that account. Again, the skidster, and then milling equipment we took out. The bush hog we moved to 26. The overall increase in expenses was $285,000. Again, there was an increase in revenue as well. So the total bottom cash balance increased. Some of it was projects that shifted from 24 to 25, and then part of it is the ARPA grant that shifted the fund balance. So, are there any questions on that? If not, I will go to Parks Fund. Okay. On Parks Fund, we did add a donations, so it shows up what the donations is, a new account on that. Parks sold 3 different vehicles. The total for all 3 was $28,000. One of them was one of the newer ones. It was $17,000. It was a pickup they had. It was a 2021, I believe. And then the other were both older, very old vehicles. So on transfers, the transfer went down 37,000. We went from 575 to 537, which decreased. And salaries, there was no changes. The only changes in services and supplies was an increase of 5,000 for a porta potty and storage, the storage sheds, or storage containers. It ended up being a little more. There was, on capital improvements, the Murray room flooring, they decided to put that off until 2026, so that was a negative 7,500 to do that. The total expenses actually decreased 1,700. The ending cash balance actually increased 28,000 from 35 to 63. Any questions on those?
No, I have a question, I just have a recommendation potentially. You know, I've looked at the rental on the trailers numerous times and thought, why don't we just purchase them? So I don't know if someone could run a cost analysis on that.
We've looked at it, some, not too deeply into it. Originally, I think the whole idea was these were built on, so they wouldn't need them. held on to this, to the current one they have, or, but I don't know where we're at on that exactly. But if we planned on keeping them, I agree. I think purchasing them would probably be the cheaper way to go.
Yeah, I did those for a company that rented them, but I would say if you had them more than 12 months, you more than paid for them, so.
Yeah, that's true. If you go to the summary page, the fund balances for general increased 291,000. For water and sewer, 1,600,000. Again, that goes back to your ARPA. And then parks, 28,000 increase. Total of 1,900,000. So it went from 5 million to 7 million. Are there any questions?
Historically, does this look like it's within range of what you've seen in years past?
Pardon?
Historically, does this look like it's within the same range as years past?
Actually, I mean, some of the revenues went up from years past because I think, thanks to Mike probably, we've added some fees that have helped, and it's helped different departments. Some of the expenses, parks, I think, has went down from what they have been. I think they're improving on that. Water and sewer, you know, prices overall went up. I mean, on everything. Supplies, office supplies. So I think overall supplies have increased. Getting the same thing or a little bit less, and you still got the higher prices. We've got several projects going on now that we haven't had in some years. Depends on the projects, on what our costs are going to be and the expenses. We've got some major projects going on right now. So it's going to be a little bit higher this year and into next because of that. Of course, we're going to have some good improvements because of that, and probably going to see some more revenue because of these increases in projects and things that are going on. So actually, I think considering inflation, we're probably, it looks pretty good, really.
And I'll speak to one of those projects that I think has been a pressing one. Excited to share this with the water board next month. We did budget $50,000 for I&I work with the idea that as we saw reductions in our Springfield sewer bill, we'd also try to roll that additional budgeted expense into more I&I work. The lift station D, JR had come up with a cunning plan. They executed the cunning plan themselves, and we believe, we're going to get some hard numbers on it, but we believe we've seen a 95% reduction in I&I in our lift station D, which would directly contribute to savings on our sewer bill. So they are working at it, and that is why we wanted to call attention to it as a separate budget line, not just to help us track how much we spent on it, but we want the public to see we're using that money they've allowed us to have through the rate increases to do something good and positive to the system. We hope to have more stories like that, in addition to things that Mike's doing on the front end to fund the departments, but on the back end as well, finding ways to save money and reduce costs through projects that we can self-administer. They're already looking for another one. You can drive by lift station D now after a good rain, and you'll see a little white pipe hanging out of the side there, and it's just a pumping away. Every drip of that is groundwater that could have gone into the sewer system, and you'll see that thing really pumping. So I was really proud. I want to give them props for that. They delivered the solution, and we're looking forward to seeing some more like that not too far away.
All right. If there's nothing, then that's just a first read. Next item, city administrator remarks.
I'll try and keep these gentle. We got road survey. You approved the IMS group to do a pavement management study this year. We had the kickoff just last week. We should see a van driving around here by the end of the month. They're going to be scanning road conditions, cracks, and all that good stuff. And then they'll have another unit come out. They're not exactly sure. They think it'll be in July. It'll come out with a little trailer on the back, making regular stops along the road, and it does a deflection test on the road to kind of test the underside. So they'll put a little bit of weight on it and then see how the road rebounds underneath. And then that combined will generate maps and grids and ideas. They'll take our anticipated $300,000 a year road improvement budget and tell us how to best spend it to get our road quality index up overall. And as a aside, I think I've talked about this with you guys before. It's a holistic pattern. You try to keep your good roads good for as long as you can. You throw your bad roads a bone as often as you can, and then you kind of try to meet them in the middle. With your bad roads, once they go bad, they can get expensive, and the road network is our most expensive infrastructure. It's likely going to be more expensive than our water and our sewer combined. You're the engineer. Would you reckon about 108,000 or upwards of that? Probably even more than that with inflation and everything. So it's something that's very important to take care of. The more we can throw at it, the more we can keep an eye on it, and the better plan we have to take care of it. The longer our good roads can stay good, because once that water gets in there and destroys the core, your road starts coming apart, and there's really not a lot you can do. So we're excited to see that. The anticipated schedule has completion for about October, though we should have preliminary results before that. We can use that to inform budget decisions and whatnot, because of the timing of it. I mean, we couldn't have made it any more perfect on that. Parks, I want to give you an update on discussions with that. Holly had taken a look at our ordinances. Everything we need is already in place, except for a repeal of a section of the ordinance that prevents a board member sitting on the Parks Board. So we'll work on getting that taken care of, and then we can just work on some logistics and some discussions to really kind of walk it home. But it looks like we're good to go on that, so we'll start working on that. And then I think that is all the really exciting stuff that I can cover in open session.
Any new business? Any unfinished business?
Just for your information, the mixed-use ordinance wasn't on the agenda for the Board of Aldermen because we thought you were overworked and I thought we could go over it. And we did not do the public noticing rights. We'll have a public hearing next month, next meeting, and we'll continue to review that ordinance. So.
All right, Casey?
Make a motion that we open the closed or recess the open session and open the closed session pursuant to RSMO section 16.021 subsection legal, subsection 3 personnel, and subsection 12 contracts.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Alder Billiard.
Yes.
Alder Hill.
Yes.
Alder Lancaster.
Yes.
Alder Matheson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion that we close the whole meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.